Live from the Business RadioX studio in Atlanta, it's time for Dental Business Radio, brought to you by Practice Quotient. Practice Quotient bridges the gap between the provider and payer communities. Now here's your host, Patrick O'Rourke.
Hi there, friends of the dental business community. This is your host, Patrick O'Rourke, on this edition of Dental Business Radio, brought to you by Practice Quotient, PPO negotiations and analysis. When there's a lot of money on the table, you probably need professional guidance. You could do it yourself, but you could also do your own taxes and represent yourself in a court of law. Doesn't mean it's a good idea. Today, I have big man on campus. Mr. Sean Wild is with us. And so Sean Wild has more letters after his name than alphabet soup. So I'm not going to go over that. And Sean is also one of the guys that doesn't sit still, does a lot of different things. And so it would be very difficult for me to tell his story. And so what I'm going to do, Sean, is I would like, for those that don't know you, I would imagine a lot of the listeners here do know who you are. But for those that don't know you, tell us about your path into the dental business world.
Well, first, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it, Pat. So, I started back in 2008. I was in automotive prior. I worked for Naval Intelligence prior to that. When we came into automotive, I was attracted to a lot of the metrics that drove business and the way that every single thing had a value on what they did, even with the phone ringing, how much it cost and what you gained from that call. So when I came to dental, it was by accident that it happened. I met a really progressive oral surgeon who really, to this day, we still meet every day at 6 o'clock in the morning, the last 13 years, every morning. And it's just been a really inspirational ride for me. And I think we both feed off and for each other on our professional, personal levels. But anyway, he basically challenged me to come and look at his business. I did. And when I looked at his business, I was a little frightened. And I was frightened that they generated so much money, but they had little green monsters running everywhere around their practice that they just either put coffee cups on, named them. They were just things that you would typically not do in business. But for instance, real quick, they have a person they worked for them for a long time. They start to become deficient. Well, they don't say, hey, goodbye, this isn't working out. They basically give them a title and make them a higher ranked person in the entity. And that seemed to be the culture that I was walking into. So in the end, he asked me to stay on and see if I wanted to help grow his business from 3 locations to where we are now. And I said, great, but if I see something and I like it, would you be interested if I could go change it or maybe build a piece of software or whatever it was for a solution? Mm-hmm. So he said, that would be great. Would you mind if I did it with you? So that was the beginning of 2008. Now we have 8 locations. We went from 3 docs to 13 docs, acquiring 2 more. We are going up to 10 locations by the end of the year. We now have a software company. Software company is OMS3, is who most of the people know us as, and is now called Practice Metrix. And it was a dashboard that we discovered when we gave data to doctors in spreadsheets. They kind of melted. They couldn't see it. So we said, we need to do something better. We need to come up with something that's maybe more visual. They work a millimeter distal or a buccal when they approach things. They're very analytical, and they just can't see empirical data. So that led us down a road of talking to a friend of mine. I said, I'm going to go to this place called CareStream. They're having a meeting up in Canada. I'm going to walk in and find the CEO and pitch this idea to him. My friend who's sitting with me now said, are you crazy? They're going to throw you out of there. So long story short, we did meet with the then president of CareStream and made a deal with the company to become a dashboard for their CS WinOMS product. And that's how we started. We were basically in a deal for a long time. And one thing it was that was restrictive for us is it prevented us, from going into other verticals and bringing the same dynamic dashboard that could help tell their business story in a much easier fashion than what they had. And last 2 years ago, approximately 2018, we were able to enter into the rest of the dental space. We're now in 18 practice management softwares. all of Henry Schein's except for one, I believe, DSN, just a number of great companies. And the one thing we get out of that relationship is I love to see someone's business data and show them, hey, did you see this? Did you see that? Most of the time they're like, I see it, but I don't understand it. And then Pat, that led to us kind of meeting you, which I'll talk about here shortly, but also it led us to helping them understand where the data comes from, what part of their workforce it is being fed from, positively or negatively. And being a practice administrator all along that ride, I actually understand what the data truly means and what we have to fix internally. Mm-hmm. So we really had a good ride in helping folks understand their data. And then now we get calls that say, Sean, I'm just too busy. I know I need to change this, but I don't know necessarily how to change it. I don't know what I don't know. Looks like you did if you were able to go from 3 to soon to be 10 locations and all those doctors.
It's not easy.
I don't know how to acquire someone. I don't understand in the marketplace how to even negotiate that contract with them or what's appealing to a practitioner at this point in their life. That just led us to doing things we do every day inside of Pennsylvania Oral Surgery and help and share that success with other folks. So when I was at an event one day and met a person who was using your services, Pat, I first was a little skeptical. I was like, oh, here we go. So you're going to give me free money and it's going to cost me something. And honestly, it was just that simple at the very end. It was, we put the professional on, like you said. I don't want to be a brain surgeon on myself. I have no skill sets for it. So I want to find the best brain surgeon. And it turned out you were easy to talk to. You are kind of almost too easy. We would see you go away and we weren't sure if someone kidnapped you or we had to call SEAL Team 6 to come retrieve you.
I tell clients all the time, I'm like, we did not abscond to Mexico, I promise.
Yes, but then all of a sudden, 2-3 months later, hey, would you accept this 18% higher negotiated rate on, or this other win? And another great point about your services are, you might go away, but the benefits keep coming, and that's really, to me, the true win. So as we started, helping people understand their data and then helping them grow their businesses, why not call somebody that was successful for me it was predictable. I enjoyed the process. I loved the results. And that's what led us to, work a little bit closer together. So anywhere I go,
likewise,
well, thank you for that. But anywhere I go in my consulting business, you're just another arrow in my quiver. And I love the fact that we stay in the same, we know what our lanes are. We try to do them very well. And it works out just fantastic for the client or the end user. So from there, we just now have been working on some more solutions. We're coming out with a new patient collaborator, which is amazing. It's the way to get the specialist out of the drawer and not be in a drawer with 7 other cards or 7 other oral surgeons. It's a way to share data back and forth. But as we treat a common patient, it's a way to never lose their x-ray or their patient again. And most importantly, it's a way for the GP to know where when they use my patient exchange, that they can dial in anytime they want from any device across the world and see exactly the status of the patient they referred and where they're at in their treatment plan. And most importantly, it saves about $2,000 to $3,000 a month in stamps, mail, and letters that these folks pretty much don't even do anything with for the most part. So that's something that helps us continue to grow our partners in oral surgery, perio, and the rest of the specialties that we work with. And most importantly, we grow. We are the end users. We are the hair club presidents. We have the same pain. We try to come up with a great solution. We test it with smart folks, and then we share it with our clients that want to do the same. Gain ground without having to have pain or a number of mistakes along the way.
Right.
So I hope that tells you a little bit more about who we are.
I think I learn something new about you every time I talk to you. And that's saying a lot because it's not that we talk infrequently. I've never heard the expression out of the drawer. I get it. It took me a second as you were talking. I was like, what does that mean? And so what I think it means, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, is that general dentists and specialists in general are reliant to some degree or another on general dentists to send them patients. They don't do a certain service that they're not comfortable. And so the specialist says, you should send, your implant cases, your wisdom teeth, or, your complex, oral surgery stuff over to us. We're amazing to work with. And here's why, right? And sometimes oral surgeons say the same things, right? And so you're looking for a way to differentiate, particularly in an environment where there's a lot of different oral surgeons, like a metropolitan area. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. So what happened to us was when I first took over the role as the CEO of Pennsylvania Oral Surgery, my principal was really sharp. He said, why don't you just walk around for about 2 months, follow us around, just watch what we do. And then while you're at it, why don't you go meet my referrals? I said, oh, your customers, that'd be great. He said, no, they're my referrals. I was like, well, I think they're your customers. If they're sending you business and you are fulfilling their needs, they're really your customers, because I came from a different business line. But to me, you must know who your customer is if you're going to be successful, because you need to treat them the best you can. So I went out with a few folks and we would meet some of our top customers, referrals. And when I walked in, they were like, oh, we would say, hey, we have some extra referral cards for you. And I wanted to make sure that we were doing, meeting all your expectations. And I watched them open a drawer and drop our cards and my fantastic oral surgeons that I thought were the best anywhere in the world into a drawer with about 14 other cards. And I thought, wow, this needs to change. Somehow I need to find a way, some transformative process that would get us out of that drawer and make us their top and only choice. And that became my mission for really the past 13 years as the CEO of our surgery group. But really as a business person, I feel like when you have these folks that invest this kind of time that they do and money to become who they are, they need to be seen differently than just anybody with an oral surgery brand,
Sure.
or any other specialty brand. So with my patient exchange, it's a little icon that sits on their desktop. It's so easy to use. They have the x-ray up in their software. They drop it in. They click a tooth number. They send it. But the nice thing is when that happens, one, you were never in a drawer. They picked you automatically because you were easy to use. And your doctor, their doctor, was able to look in there without having to. This is typically what happens, Pat. Get that guy on the line. I want to know about this. Well, that guy's in surgery or that gal's in surgery. So that doctor's standing there. Their front desk has to pick up a phone and call your front desk. They have to find a way to get your doctor out of a place. By now, his patient called them. He or she's back in that room. And in just the whole communication pathway was just not elegant or slick. So this, we found out, we just thought we need to keep fixing these things as an entrepreneur, just as a problem solver. In my old world, if you kick the door and it bounced back in your face, so to speak, in the old world of being overseas, you might not kick the door and walk instantly forward. You learn, you take a step back and you say, I don't want to do that anymore. And that's kind of what it was for us. We said, we don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to keep bothering the GPs, our customers, to get a simple x-ray or to try to give them the information they need. And sending a letter out in today's world, I guarantee you, Pat, 99.9% of our partners in the dental community are still printing letters. Specialists are still printing them, put a piece of, in a mail, put a stamp on it, mailing it to folks who then have to find some place to put that into a meaningful way for the GP to retrieve it. It's just archaic. So I
had no idea that's how it worked.
Every letter, every patient that you see has to be totaled up, so to speak, on a treatment plan or some type of communication back to the referral. Has to.
Gotcha.
Or else you've lost your patient, right? So I think we're on to something that's going to be just so transformative for the industry, and the fact that they could just look at their any device is agnostic is how our product works. Look at the cloud, pull the patient up, not only see everything that you did for the patient, but ties the dental implant company, the lab into the process. So the total care is being managed in one view. And the really nice part is when you want to send that patient back, they actually have a calendar in their hand that they're looking at that lights up when that patient's coming back. So now they automatically know, oh, these 4 people, that's right, that was an all-in-4. Wait, that was that. Let's make sure we're ready. And it makes you their choice, the choice for them to do business with. And that's elegance.
That is elegance. That's awesome. And so my mind goes to, okay, well, that reduces my cost of care because I'm an insurance guy, right? So I'm always like, well, how does this affect the actual cost of care, maybe healthcare outcomes? That's important too, but that's very important. Don't get me wrong. But as somebody who's sat in the boardroom, we do talk about cost of care a whole lot. Now, healthcare outcome, you improve the healthcare outcome, you reduce your cost of care. That's generally speaking a given. But this sounds to me like it makes the specialist look like a hero, but it also, you're reducing time. It's more efficient, and there's less likelihood of x-rays getting misplaced or wrong or, anything like that. And so the patient, it's a smoother transition of care amongst the providers, which is a goal of really everybody in the industry right now, from payer to provider to patient. And that'd be accurate, right?
Yeah. You just named a lot of touch points that we think that it solved. One was you're not for HIPAA, because that's also a challenge to worry about. A lot of folks are just sending things back and forth in the mail, in your email, and they're not using encrypted devices.
Gmail is not HIPAA compliant, is what I heard.
Most of them are. Yeah, most of them are not. So, and they're cumbersome. So we thought that it would solve that challenge. It would save a lot of trees, Pat. There's nothing wrong with that either, right?
Yeah,
saving trees,
I like
and
trees.
envelopes and stamps. And then in the end, you're also giving the GP really, truly what they want, and that is the story of, think about this, they took their coveted patient and they handed them off somewhere and they can't see anything until someday a letter arrives at their office. Hopefully that got brought back to their attention, because a lot of things can happen between the time it hits the office and did it really get back to the GP, the dentist. So right now, they now are trained that when they want to look at something, they want to see what they want when they want to. Well, that's not so easy in this world when we're tethered together through paper and snail mail and a lot of those other archaic methods. So here it's instant gratification. They instantly know, and there's nothing worse than having a thought, trying to remember it because 14 other things happened because you couldn't get the answer right away. And now you're trying to remember again why you started. So we think it's going to just change the way that we do. We being all of us, like you said, a better outcome comes from tying a dental implant company and their specialist into an all-4 case or a complex multiple implant case, and they're seeing the treatment plan and identifying a potential challenge. Measuring twice is always better than cutting twice, right? So get a separate look there, and the lab also has the ability to share its portion. And now it's a team-based approach and a virtual operating pathway, so to speak, where everybody is on board, and yet the quarterback still remains the GP, and it's priceless. So we think it's really going to be revolutionary. And whether it is or isn't, Pat's never been my motivation financially. I just think it's going to change the way we do business. And once you do that, that just makes things fun from the perspective of our little company called Practice Metrix.
Right. Well, I think it's kind of cool that you're like, I just solved the problem for us, and then you've tested it, you believe in it, obviously, because that's what you're using, because that's you. And then you export, or you're like, look, whoever wants in can jump in. I think that's great. Let's switch gears a little bit, because, one of the topics of a recent show, really in the environment that we're in right now, there's certainly a lot of folks that are in growth stage. And, anecdotally, I talk to a lot of folks, and when they get they start growing their practice. You have one location, you're knocking it out of the park. 2, yeah, you got it going on. 3, now you're starting to extend yourself. So to me, anecdotally, right, this is what I've noticed, is once you get to that 3 or 4 mark, things become a lot different, because you can't be in so many places at one time. Now you went from 3 to 10 now. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you had to jump over? run
It's a great
through?
question. It's a great question. I think the biggest challenge internally is and this is with every human being, in my opinion, is you all rise to your highest level of incompetencies and then you stay there or you do not. You decide to overcome, which takes reflection, evaluation, and change. And I think that's where you really need to focus with a business is whatever that thing was that made you successful to have one or two of them, there's a brand there, whether you realize it or not. And most specialists or for physicians in general don't realize the brand is more than just their treatment or the way they provide their care. They see it very, very egocentric. Of course, I treat patients great, and you might and probably do, but does the rest of your customer-facing interactions support that vision or support that outlook that you're trying to portray? And that's everything from the time they walk up to your front desk or till the time they finally are escorted out to their car. And was their billing completed in an efficient manner so that they're not getting the wrong bills and now you're devaluing that brand along the way. So we really break things down. Again, I guess it's my ex-military background, a lot of processes. You don't put 2 or 3 million people into the services and not have a lot of lessons learned, reflection, organization, and process review. So where I found a lot of doctors when I first had met them initially, I must be smart. My check cleared. I make a lot of money. I'm pretty smart. And the truth is, hey, they're really highly intelligent, but they spend zero time for the most part learning how to operate a multi-million-dollar business that they're going to have because they are great practitioners. And then how do you communicate across multiple locations, making sure that your brand is still the same brand at every place, fit, feel, touch, all of it. And then how do you train people and manage those people and grow those people without processes when you're operating in 25 square centimeters of space every day? Physicians are always looking in that space. They can't see behind them. They certainly can't see 3 office locations away. And they really don't understand all those interactions because they're not there. And how do you measure it, test it, weigh it? And that's where data comes back in, Pat. When you start to see a office by percentage of a formula, my production, my collections, my patient count, if all those were same and they equaled X, and that X is lower or higher, there's something there if you know how to dig in and figure it out. And that's where the magic really happens in my world is I want to identify where they are, how that happened. You were easy for us, Pat. You gave us something we could easily measure. It was just simple. What you do isn't simple. To me, it's you must have elves. But whatever you have up there in your workout, your standard work shop.
It's not easy, let me tell you.
Yeah. You did a great job for us, but it was easy to see in our percentage of collections going up, right?
Sure.
But how do you measure when you have 2 offices and in our software, you can easily see your top referrals. It's very visual. But if one of them is no referral, it tells me automatically they're not getting that information at the front desk. Then I can dive in instantly and tell you what front desk. And I can tell you what front desk I would want you to use as a training source with multiple locations because it's all math, it's all metrics. And it's not all fun unless you enjoy doing it. We enjoy doing it. But then
I don't want to do it, but I think it's cool.
Yeah, exactly. But then when you can come onto the ground, we have clients all over the U.S. who can fly into their practice, watch them for a day, and bring them really great, meaningful change that is measurable, it's predictable, and on top of that, it's profitable. It seems to be taking off for us because it's just resonating with all those folks each and every time we have an engagement. So that's the kind of fun part. And then when I pull you out or someone like you, it really brings that value. It's just to set it and forget it for me. Hey, by the way, don't you also want to make more money for the same work you're doing with your carriers? Sure. And we pull out that predictable error called practice quotient. So we're trying to just approach this as a engagement. I hate to say consultants. I hate to say we're going to have an engagement for a year and we're going to grow your practice and you're going to find typically a 4, 5x multiple greater return on the dollar you spent compared to the dollar, much like you do, Pat. Much like the dollar you used to bill previously. And people like that. Who doesn't? I'll
It
give
makes
you
it
a
pretty
dollar.
easy. Well,
Yeah, I'll give you a dollar. You're going to be $5 back. But forget the financial return. We always bring, and honestly, Pat, we can measure it up front. We know automatically through our coding reviews, because we have 3 professional coders and some other smart folks looking at the data. We could tell initially automatically what we're going to bring to that practice as a financial return. And that's great, 4 or 5x
that's
on your
amazing.
investment. But put that aside. That's not the magic. The magic is when you give a doctor time to have lunch, because they're so disorganized in their scheduling, they just never get it. Or time to do their notes properly and not take it away from their family at nighttime because they're sitting at the office doing their notes or bringing it home with them. To me, that's the real sweet spot for them. Money's great. Nothing wrong with it, Pat. We all need it. But
that's right.
Change your life. When you can change your life, I think that's when you're starting to say, wow, I did something there. And those are the kind of relationships we like. And typically we're now in our second year of consulting. We have a pretty high percentage ratio of folks that are signing on for us. We call partnering, coaching. So we not only coach, we fly on site. We review them continuously through the 52 weeks. We have call to actions that help us, show them where we are effective, reinforce their staff because they helped us become more effective, create reward systems internally, better management systems internally, and really clearer ladders for their own staff to go and grow, because they now understand what it is you really wanted them to do. Most times, doctor walks in, they're like, and you're saying, well, what is the challenge? Well, they don't know what I need. But there isn't that layer between that really looked at the mission, identified what it was going to be, made sure everything was there, checked twice, because there's no one that really understands. I shouldn't say no one, but many times there's 1 or 2 great people. So when you walk into a practice, I got Mary, I have Jill. That's it. There's 13 other people standing there. So if you had a great team, you'd say, no, I have the best team in the world here, Sean, not
right.
Mary and. So those are the kind of things that tell us, hey, we're going to be having fun here. There's a lot for us to do, and the practitioners are going to get to have lunch. And I'll tell you a quick lunch story. I met a fellow, was the gentleman that hired me, and his partner, and I sat right next to him 13 years ago, and I said, it was August. I was looking at their business throughout the summer, and he said, Sean, I just want to have lunch. I'm a lunch guy. I just love to sit down and have a really good lunch. Is that crazy? I said, you know what, Andy, that's great. And come September, we're going to put that on the board meeting schedule. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to get you lunch, because right now you need to go back out there and work. And he was just like, you're right. And off he went doing more whizzies. But the truth of it was, I knew that when the next year came around, that I could increase his production, his predictability, have a less stressful day, and he's going to produce more than I really want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. One of the gospels that I preach, I had to learn it the hard way. As a business owner and entrepreneur, you run, but nobody's ever sitting on their deathbed saying, what, I wish I would have put in 90 hours instead of 80. That just doesn't happen. And so, I've got 2 small kids, and that's my priority. Dylan and Evelyn Grace, and I'll tell you, one of the more fulfilling things I've done that I didn't think I would ever have time to do, so I coach basketball. I don't know if you knew that. So 5th grade basketball, Little River Eagles. That's right. And that's right. I know you like that, Philadelphia zone. And so one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done, and I didn't play basketball growing up, and the first year, 2nd grade, we didn't win 1 game. And last year we only lost 2. We went 2nd round of the playoffs. And so, that kind of taught me, and when I look back, I've done a lot of good things in, business wise, but, the balance, I was talking to a client the other day, and he's like, oh, well, I'm taking my first vacation, but I've been on the phone. I'm like, dude, if I knew you're on vacation, I'm hanging up right now. Don't talk to me. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, go be hanging out with your family. Like, listen, the world doesn't stop turning because you're at the beach, bro. So chill out. The other thing that you said, I'm going to say it another way, because I think that a lot of docs and you talk about your brand, and they talk about how, there's a lot of time, effort, training, and, prestige that they built and what they feel, right? And that's their brand. And then as it expands, but you can't have your eyeballs everywhere, and you don't know what you don't know, and you can't see all of that. And I like analogies. And so while you were explaining it, it reminded me of like somebody that's a really good chef, makes the best food ever, right? They got a beautiful dining room, and they got a great, host system, and everybody comes in and it's awesome. Except for one thing, the bathroom. The bathroom's awful. The bathroom looks like a, third world country, and, there's no paper towels. That ruins the entire experience. And
Sure
that's
does.
kind of what you're saying is, do you know all the facets of your business? Am I picking up what you're putting down?
100%. It's about identifying. An old mentor of mine probably changed my life. It took me a while to digest what he said because of maceration. I needed to get a little bit older and wiser. But I said, how did you do all this? And the guy's like, it's real simple. And I was 26 or 7, and he probably had $10 million in the bank, a self-made guy. And he said, simple, kid, you do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And I was like, wait, what? No, tell me what you're really doing. And he just looked at me, but it was so true. Learn to do more of what works and less of what doesn't. Always be. Now, when you dive into that, it's a great statement, right? Mm-hmm. When you dive into it, it's about evaluating. And the doctors do all that. These guys are so sharp. They can't make mistakes or they get sued, right? That's what I've learned early on. They can't be wrong. There is no place for wrong. So in that light, because if they're wrong, it's going to be harm or it's going to be, legal harm. So in that light, they're always doing this themselves, but getting somebody outside of their world to support them is looking at those things every day and inspiring people to be their best and teaching them to measure twice and cut once and all the things that, we like to use as these euphemisms. But the truth of it is, it's only that way. There is no shortcut to it. And you have to be always looking, measuring. The same with renegotiating, Pat. If you did it one time and it was over, we had that done in 1974. We're fine. But we know it doesn't work that way. We know we better call Pat every couple of years because these guys are working this. The truth of it is they are working not equally harder, exponentially harder to take our money away. That's their job, to get the most they can get through our services for the least amount of remittance, right? So you need somebody like a Pat out there on the front line. That's our special forces of negotiating for these folks. The same as we need to be looking at their business when we're on site, or looking at their data and saying, you know what, just propofol you're using. Like, we have so many facets of savings for our engagements. It's in procurement. It's in their waste. It's in overnight shipping. It's all these things that. It's easy for me to say, hey, you're going to give me 50 grand. I'm going to give you 250, 300. Who wouldn't do that deal? But it's not the money, Pat. It's that renewable energy and effort and outcome that you produce in their practice that when you leave for that year, and I'm thrilled when we do, because they can go fish now forever themselves, and they just take off and
awesome.
And changing. I was a product of a single mom, single parent for a while, and I looked at how hard she worked and the many jobs she had. And, you don't even appreciate it when you're 6 and 7,
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at most of our medical field are gals. I'm very proud to say at Pennsylvania Oral Surgery, we have a board of directors, but we also have a supervisory board. And that middle management board runs that entire practice while I can be sitting here today talking to you. It's kudos to them. And they're all female, and they're all really, really strong leaders now, and are people that other females inside the practice, because most of the dental world or surgical world is female-based for the most part, and support staff or doctors. So here they are, they're out there and they're becoming role models for each other, and there's nothing greater than that, watching somebody change their life and find a career where they only had a job.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big believer in it.
So that's what I think that's what drives every time we graduate a practice. It's our team sitting around the room and we're toasting those folks for success. We're really toasting those middle management levels that we create for the doctors, so they can get all the things they want. But what they really have, and I hope they realize it, is they have a future that's going to be less dependent on them and more dependent on their staff, and their staff can do it. They can handle it, and they'll take them to greater lanes. So that, or greater, I guess, or lanes or whatever. So that's kind of our motivation internally, and a lot of it's psychology. It really is. But there's a lot of ingredients that go into soup. And I'll tell you this: I watch some chef show. I love watching the cooking shows and things like that on TV.
Yeah.
And I watch these folks down down south, and they're in Louisiana, and this old timer sitting there, and she's just like, you know what? Here's all my ingredients. You can take a peek because it's all up here. I tell you, it's not the ingredients, what you do with them. I thought, you know what? She is so right. So, we're not afraid to share what we do, because sharing it and getting it done and producing that outcome without doctors having pain in the process, that's the magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the magic for us. And then leaving and seeing them do it afterwards, there's nothing greater than that. Nothing greater than that for our company.
No, so, I completely agree. When people say thank you, it makes my day. It really does. And when I go to, different conferences and folks walk up, I remember being in one earlier this year, pre-COVID, and the guy next to us, he's like, I've never seen anything like that. I don't like to hang around the booth. You don't either. I see you occasionally walking around animals. And so, but he's like, people just walk up to your booth and they say thank you. And if you're not there, they're like, when's Pat coming back? Can you tell him I stopped by and say thank you? And that makes my day. So anybody listening to the show, right, I'm telling you, that makes me happy. Send me a Christmas card or a holiday card if you're not into Christmas, I think gratitude is really important, and especially these days, I think that it keeps me going. I mean, it's not about the money for me. I could stay in corporate,
Sure.
But the show's not really about me. Is there anybody that you would like to give a special mention or a shout out to? Because I would like to give one to Mrs. Sean Wild, because every time I type in congratulations and I get confetti on my little iPhone text, I think of her. And so thank you again, Mrs. Sean Wild.
Well, I appreciate that. My wife has been life-changing for me. I would say the two people obviously would be the two factions of people, my wife and my child, my children, but also my partner, Charlie Burns. I've been with him 35 years. I've worked for him. He's worked for me. We've always worked together. He's here today with us. And honestly, I was in Wisconsin, like you, Pat. We're everywhere. When you turn around and your partner's always there. He's always supporting him. Nobody runs the dashboard better than he does as far as the training and the educating goes. And, without him, I wouldn't be here. So that would be my shout out.
All right. Well, hey, Charlie Burns, shout out to Charlie Burns. He is the man. And when you can't get a hold of Sean Wild, you just find Charlie Burns. He's kind of like, I've got Scott. Scott's kind of works behind the scenes. Teresa Duncan called him underrated this week. I think he liked that. And so, but talking to Scott's just like talking to me, and he sounds just like me, but looks a lot different.
I think you're probably better talking to Charlie first, but I don't want to say it up front. Yeah. Charlie's definitely the glue of our company now. But I would say this, because of you, Pat, if there's anybody that wants to try our dashboard, no strings attached, and maybe get a free coding review because of you and because of this, this opportunity here to get in front of them, I'd be glad to give it to them. And that would be, take it for 60 days, enjoy it, don't pay for it. And if you like it afterwards, great. And if not, at least you will have a amazing coding review telling you how much money you can make next year doing nothing different but the same work you're doing.
So what I heard, and listeners, what you should hear is if you mention the words Dental Business Radio and or Practice Quotient to the team over at Practice Metrix, then you will have, say it one more time, Sean.
You're going to get a dashboard that helps them see their business in a much easier fashion for free for 60 days, and a free coding review where we will look at their current billing processes, what their charges are. We have 3 certified professional coders. Some are dental coders, some are medical coders. And what we'll do is look at what they're billing and how they're billing it, and let them see immediately that they could be making X number of dollars more. And if they wish to go forward, we could talk about that point, but at least they'll know they're leaving a couple $100,000 or more on the table every year.
Let's talk about the coding. Just for a minute. And so before we end this, we want to make sure that we get the contact information there, because sometimes I get asked about the coding and I'm like, listen, we're not clinical. You're the doc, so we don't do that. And so it makes sense. It's helpful for me to know that there's a resource there. Are you seeing, because those of us in the insurance industry, we've been talking about medical dental integration for well over a decade, probably 20 years. And now everybody's like, well, now it's the time. Time is now. What are you seeing, anecdotally? What are you seeing with medical versus dental? And is there anything, without getting into any privacy, issues?
Sure. I think I get the question. So think about this way: when the physicians started doing what they do, they're pretty predictable. They want to do the same thing over and over again. So unless someone comes to them and says, no, you can actually do this or that, and without being in that world, like everything else you said, Pat, you don't want to be your own lawyer if you're not an attorney, and even if you do, you probably don't want to be, right? So when you're not looking for those changes, you're trying to stay the same predictable, or you're not in that environment to say, hey, you can no longer build this way, you need to build that way. Or if you you can now build this in conjunction with that. I'll give you an example. There's one code that most folks are doing anywhere between 3,000 to 10,000 of them a year. Now, what if you could add $35 to that as an acceptable billable charge?
Mm-hmm.
That could be life changing. We could take 10,000 and times it by 35. So it's
another
not
employee.
Just that, 100%. Or your wife's kitchen she's been asking for these last 4 years, and you weren't able to give it to her. So it could be anything that's important. Sending your kids to private school, or a better education. So when you can look at their coding and the things they're doing, it's not just saying, hey, here's a code. We actually will fly in, attend, look at their processes, help them change the coding, help them change it in the software, help them change it through their processes, make sure it gets built out effectively, and it gets returned at the end of the month, or, depending on the time their claims take to kick. Just separating things dental and medical and not understanding where there's an edge with either one. It's when you do a lot of things, and we do in oral surgery or, endo, peri, all the same, you're doing a lot of things. A simple change the multiple is thousands,
Mm-hmm.
So that's really exciting for me. And then the doctors are like, well, I don't know if I feel good doing that. Let's say that's a potential. Every change takes somebody saying, wait, I'm not sure. And you look at it and you're like, wait a minute. What is the difference charging for that? And like, you know what? You're right, Sean. They just don't know, And
Mm-hmm.
it's like a scary thing. Once they get past that and they look at it like, you're right, I'm billing for this, I'm billing for that. It's the same thing. And they need to have it, or you wouldn't be doing the thing that you're billing for. You just didn't know there was a charge.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It does.
And that's exciting. To me, that's just super exciting. So, and then looking at their processes when you're on site and you're saying, wow, you're doing this, and do you realize that has a cost or a benefit, or if you change that, and they're like, I don't know why I do it that way. No one's come in and said, why do I do it that way? And
I get that sometimes.
I'm sure you do. You did it with me a few times. I'm like, oh, okay, you got a point there. So it's just, you get trapped in your own realities, and you usually stay there, or you evolve and you don't. So we like to give the folks a lot of choices, from everything from their scheduling to their billing and especially, Pat, the way they collect money is probably our biggest win for them. We have systems. When you bill a lot of procedures, we do about 77,000 procedures a year. You tend to get more efficient, or you go out of business, right? It's pretty much
So,
you're either really good or really
driving
bad.
around town with a baseball bat, not very efficient.
There you go. So, what we tend to do is look at their billing processes. We've either saved them money and reducing their efforts because they didn't know what they were doing. They chased it not in a very effective manner. And once they look at our processes and we're able to dial into their systems every week, Pat, and review it, then the doctor's like, wait a minute, I just picked up a whole billing team and that's in there too. That's what we always hear. Is that extra? Is that extra, Sean? It's like, it is nothing extra. This is what you get for us. And that's probably the greatest win when you hear them go, like, someone's not taking advantage of me, someone's not nickel and diming. I'm actually getting more than I thought, Pat. And that's the magic for us.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome. Probably, you've been busy. I'm really happy that you've shared all of this, because I've learned a lot. I know you don't sit still, but that's a lot.
I would say our people really are the reason we are finding success today. Really, it's our team. Charlie and his team are just amazing, and having them partner with other folks that want to go and grow, that's magic. Amen.
So if folks want to find you or Charlie, then how do they do that?
Sure, they can go to www.practicemetrix, that's METRIX.com, and they can call 610-600-9932.
Okay, terrific. I want to thank you again, Sean Wild, for being on the show, and I want to thank our sponsor and everybody on our team, on the Practice Quotient team. Nikki B, who runs it, who's also female and is certainly the lead. She's really the boss in our organization. And everybody on the PQ team. Shout out to Scott Marquardt, even though I don't think he's listened to the show yet. You're underrated, brother. And to Practice Quotient, PPO negotiations and analysis. You can find us at www.practicequotient.com. If you enjoyed this content, please share it and also rate it 5 stars. If you did not like this content, then please get a hold of me and tell me why, and I'm happy to take your feedback. Or if you disagree, come on the show. We'll put on the music and we'll have a little dance. If you have really profanity-laden things to say, then send it to John Ray at jray@businessradiox.com. Thank you to John Ray and to Diane Lasorda and everybody on the Business Radio X team for making us look and sound good. We appreciate y'all. So with that, this is your host, Patrick O'Rourke. Until next time.